Okay, so today we're going to talk about a little bit about exponents, and then we're going to do operations of polynomials. So let's start with some rules that you learned in algebra and we might need to recap. Okay, product rule. So when you have a base a to the m times the same base to another exponent, you are going to add the exponents. Okay, so you have the base a to the power of m plus n. Right, power rule. When you have a to the m to the nth power, you're multiplying. Okay. And then your power rule number 2 is if you have two bases to the same power, it becomes a to the m times b to the m. Okay. Erase that. A to the m, b to the m. And finally, when you have a quotient, so you have the same base in the numerator and the denominator with different exponents, you are subtracting. Okay, so let's try a few examples. It's really important to notice in example 1a that you have a 3 here. Okay, so you should have 3 to the 4th to the 3rd, and then x squared to the 3rd. So you're distributing the 3 in a way. The exponent of 3. This is the power rule, so you have 3 to the 4th to the 3rd becomes 3 to the 12th. And you can keep it in exponent expression. And then we have x to the 6th because you do 2 times 3. In B, again, you want to distribute that 5, so we have negative 2 to the 5th, m to the 6th to the 5th, and then we hope over t squared to the 5th, and then z to the 5th. And that comes out as a negative 32, because 2 to the 5th is 32, m to the 30th, 6 times 5, and then we have t to the 10th, and z to the 5th. So everything is simplified, and you only see each variable once. So that's a little bit about exponents. We're going to actually revisit that in a few days. Okay, let's go to adding and subtracting. We should all be very familiar with adding and subtracting like terms. Okay, so I'll just bring you through the actual applications. It's not something I think you don't know, but let's just recap a few problems. Okay, so we're lining up our like terms, and that's going to give me the sum of negative 2m to the 3rd. These are going to give me the sum of negative m squared. And then finally, we have a positive 4 and a negative 3, which is going to give me a positive 1. So there's our addition of polynomials. Okay. In this one, we're just going to distribute the negative. So we have 8m to the 4th, p to the 5th, minus 9m to the 3rd, p to the 5th, becomes plus 11m to the 4th, p to the 5th, and then it becomes minus 15m to the 3rd, p to the 5th. So we have our like terms here and here, which gives us a sum of 19, m to the 4th, p to the 5th. Notice how I'm just adding the coefficients, so the numbers in front. And then these two things are going to give me a sum of negative 24, m to the 3rd, p to the 5th. And notice how we cannot add these two because of these exponents. Okay. Let's just simple adding. All right, let's go to multiplying. Okay, remember the expression FOIL? All you're really doing is distributing each term to the other. Okay, so we have our 6m times 4m, which gives us 24m squared. Then we have our 6m times negative 3, which gives us negative 18m. 1 times 4m, which gives us positive 4m. And 1 times negative 3, which gives us negative 3. So we want to just make sure we combine all our like terms. So we have a product of 24m squared minus 14m minus 3. Okay. When you square a binomial, like in B, let's go to the next one. Okay. Remember, this is x minus 3 twice. Okay. So x minus 3 twice. So when we multiply, we need to make sure we rewrite it twice. because it's not just going to be x squared plus 9. You have a middle term. So it's x squared. We have negative 3x minus 3x gives us negative 6x. And negative 3 times negative 3 gives us 9. So we get a product of x squared minus 6x plus 9. Okay. This last one is a little bit longer because it's a trinomial times a trinomial. So I'm just going to make sure I distribute everything. And then I'm going to write it in standard form at the end. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute my 2x to everything. So I'm going to be 2x to the third. And then it gives me negative 10x squared. And then finally positive 6x. Okay. And then I'm going to take my 3x to the third and I'm going to distribute that. And that gives me 3x to the fifth. Notice how I'm putting it in front here. I'm trying to line my like terms. And then I have 3x to the third times negative 5x, and that's negative 15x to the fourth. And then I have 3x to the third times 3, and that's going to give me positive 9x to the third. Okay. And then finally I'm going to do my 5. So 5 times x squared gives me 5x squared. Then I have negative 25x, and then positive 15. So when I do it vertical like this, now I can just add my like terms. Okay, so that gives me 3x to the fifth minus 15x to the fourth, and then I have plus 9x to the third plus 5x squared. Positive 6x and negative 25x give me a difference of negative 19x, or sum I should say, and then positive 15 at the end. So here is my final answer. And again, this is 5. It kind of looks like a 3. Okay, so that's multiplying trinomials. So that's probably the longest one. And notice again how I line up. Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about in R3 is long division. And this is probably one of those concepts that you may have forgotten. Okay. So we'll do a few examples together, just kind of get a recap on it. And I'm going to put a few notes on the side, just right here, so you can follow steps. These are good to write in your notes because they may help. Okay. All right, so we're dividing x minus 6 by x squared minus 10x plus 24. Notice how they're both in standard form. Okay. I have my dividend, and I have my divisor. My divisor always goes on the outside, and my dividend goes inside. Okay. So when I divide, I always look at the first two terms of the dividend and the divisor. Okay. And I'm going to ask myself, x squared divided by x. All right. We're going to divide first terms of dividends and divisor. Okay. All right, so x squared divided by x is going to give me x. So I'm going to put my quotient. When I divide, I get a quotient. I'm going to put my quotient right up here. Okay. And then after I do that, I'm going to multiply my quotient back by divisor. So I'm going to take x, and I'm going to multiply it by x minus 6. And that's going to go right here. Okay? So that gives me x squared minus 6x. And then after I divide or multiply back, now what I'm going to need to do is in long division, you need to make sure you subtract like terms. Okay? So when I end up subtracting, what ends up happening is these cancel. When I subtract a negative 6, it becomes positive 6. You know, I should do that in a different color. Let's see. Okay, so this became negative. All right. Okay, so when I go ahead and I subtract, I'm going to get negative 4x. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop the 24. So after I subtract, I drop next term. Okay? And then I start the process over again. So I'm going to take negative 4x and I'm going to divide by x. And that gives me negative 4. And then I'm going to multiply back. And that's going to go here. So that gives me negative 4x, positive 24. So when I subtract, this cancels, and this cancels as well, which gives me a remainder of 0. So since I don't have a remainder, this right here is called my quotient. Okay, so there's my answer. All right, let's try another one. There's something interesting about this. There's two things that are wrong. Number one, it's not in standard form. Number two, there's a missing term. Okay, so we're going to set up our divisor, which is x minus 2. But when we set up our dividend, we need to make sure it's in standard form. So that 3x to the third should come first. The 4x squared should come next. And I need a place setter for my x value that is actually 0. And then plus 10. Okay. So now when I start my process of dividing negative 3x by x, I'm getting 3x squared. That goes here. Okay. A lot of people like to put in 0x, or you can put in just 0, as long as you have a placement holder for it. All right, so we got 3x squared. We're going to multiply it back. So 3x squared by x minus 2 is going to give me 3x to the third, and then minus 6x squared. So when I subtract, I get 10x squared. And then I drop it. The next term to be dropped is the 0x. And I start over. So 10x squared divided by x is 10x. And again, I multiply it back. And that goes here. And that gives me 10x squared minus 20x. So I add, or I'm sorry, subtract. And that gives me positive 20x. Drop the 10. Again, one more time. 20x divided by x is 20. Okay, multiply back, you get 20x. And then minus 40. So when you subtract, you get positive 50 as your remainder. Now this is huge. Make sure your remainder goes over your divisor. Okay, so I have my quotient, and then I have my remainder over my divisor. And here's my answer here. Okay, so 3x is squared plus 10x plus 20 plus 50 over x minus 2. Okay. All right, so that's it for the lesson of long division and operations of polynomials.